Thank you so much for the warm introduction, and so good to have you all, friends. It's me back again. My name is Apulak, as Niharika so kindly gave a quick introduction. Right, great to speak to all of you. We have a amazing set of sessions. I've got a panel that I'm really excited to speak about. Friends from my workplace in the past. So, but before that, I just thought I'll walk you through a presentation of roughly 20-25 minutes about an area which I've tracked for some time now. And so my experience around the India market dates to over close to 2 decades now. And I'll tell you one thing, I've covered several technology themes in the past, but one theme that works like a horizontal is security. I mean, be it my, if I speak about, say, cloud computing, I speak about virtualization, I speak about 5G, I speak about IoT, I speak about edge, I speak about AI, automation. One horizontal which stitches this entire story together seems to be around cybersecurity. So we thought of having one session today where we deep dive on how security has changed itself over the years, right? But before we did that, probably we'll take a step back and just walk you through why we see the transformation, right? So first, when we speak about digital transformation, a term which is used in almost every possible forum like this, So when we speak about digital transformation, it hinges on several platforms. At Teal, we've defined it across three. One being, business processes, the other being business strategy. The last but not least is around internal and external stakeholders. Now, if you look at how this pans out, see, when we speak about business processes and strategy, most of our digital transformations in the past, so when I say past, I'm talking about the pre-pandemic, we're dating back to a decade, a lot of our focus used to be in and around, how do I ensure that you have process transformation, you have business agility, we focusing on workflow management, operational efficiencies. So the idea was to continuously improve your business processes and make it more productive and commercially viable. But in the last 2 to 3 years, which kind of is in conjunction with the pandemic, we see a lot of focus in and around stakeholders, both internal and external. When we typically talk about stakeholders, there's a lot of focus around customers. But the last 3 years taught us one simple thing, and it's an American adage which says that if you treat your employees as gold, they'll treat your customers as diamonds. And I think it came very strongly to the forefront in this particular slide. So when we take this story further, we kind of asked, our friends with whom we ran this survey, folks like you, and you see the numbers speak for themselves. Typically, as I said, when we speak about any transformation initiative, right, a lot of emphasis will always be around customers. So 73% said that most of their DT initiatives centered around improving the customer experience. Understandable. But then that is where the interesting point comes. If you see purely in terms of personal stack, employee productivity and employee experience goes very close to improved customer experience. 64 to 67% numbers dictate that a lot of digital transformation initiatives have been around enhancing employee productivity and, more importantly, working on the experience of the employee. I mean, gone are the days when you treat this very important asset class for granted. And I think I'll tell you, the next slide tells you why we were forced to do that. So for instance, I think the way we work, or the place of our work, has changed and altered for good. Was it pandemic induced? Of course it is. But will it come back to where we were, say, in a concentrated workforce? My safe answer would be no, right? I know going forward, while yes, many of us are going back to offices, but I think we are very, very secured and well positioned to embark on a journey which is purely hybrid in nature, right? So we expect many of our friends going to offices, say days a week, maybe 4 days a week. But what is more important is it's not a question of how many days you go to office, but the question is, do I have the wherewithals, the flexibility to work from any time, anywhere, and securely? The answer is yes. So if you see, fundamentally, the reason why we had to focus so much around employee productivity and employee experience is because the way we work has altered. And to a very large extent, I'd like to say, maybe not the exact forum to speak about, but device actually is the center of it all. Because device truly is the new office, right? So if you step back, so earlier we used to have concentrated workforce. Now our workforce scattered all across, right? Earlier our entire IT proliferation was focused towards office. Now it's employee focused, right? Security also, hence, monitoring and managing was probably less complicated than what we are. And the reason for that is fairly simple. Now, imagine a scenario where 7% of your employees are coming to offices, right? So a perimeter of security, right, or perimeter of work is confined to one central console. Now, suddenly you have these 100 employees scattered all across, or even if it's 10, 20, let's not get into the numbers. But the question is, when we talk about security vulnerabilities, attack can happen from anywhere. So suddenly, what we saw was, till a few years back, while we used to focus a lot around purely on network security, like I said, because our perimeter of operations were such, now suddenly a lot of emphasis is being given to endpoint security, right? I think the endpoint has become important. How I access applications has become important, right? So, and because of which, a lot of great things have come out. Yes, we can't dispute all the challenges that mankind has faced due to the upheaval due to the COVID. But we've come, I believe, for all those who are here with us today and all across the world, I think we've come out stronger, more resilient, more importantly, adaptive to the changes that lie ahead, right? But having said, one key challenge that stemmed up due to the way we work, be it a work from home scenario or remote scenario, is the kind of security complexities came up. The number of cybersecurity breaches, not just in India, it's a global phenomena. I mean, it had an exponential rise. We never saw the kind of breaches that took place in the last 2 to 3 years as compared to the last, say, 6 to 7 years. And the reasons could be many. Like, we have some data points for you to absorb in. So, for instance, interestingly, 20% of organizations believe, that security breaches that they had, many of them were due to, employees working out of the remote location. Because, like I said, your perimeter of operations is now scattered, right? 60% of organizations do not provide, that's what they, it's a candid admission, say that we are not in a position to provide training or knowledge sharing sessions across a plethora of security offerings to everyone in the system, right? 90% of, and this is numbers to suggest, the 90% of cybersecurity issues arise due to human errors. And I think that's something fairly fundamental when we talk about, security as an area. So essentially what we're trying to talk about is, when we talk about the fructification of the future of work, it's important that it's done on 4 key foundations. At least that's what we believe in Teal. And this is how it pans out. Essentially, we're talking about the future work being more sustainable. So create work policies which are sustainable in the long run. The second point, making the entire employee experience more adaptive, more secure, and inclusive. And by inclusive, I'm not just suggesting a workplace phenomena. I'm talking about, there are a lot of soft elements to it. It's about who comes to office, who does not come to office, making sure that every individual within a system feels secure and feels a part of the system, right? A third point, a very important point, which is pretty much the cornerstone of hybrid workplace, ensuring that you get to work anytime, anywhere, and you have the flexibility of doing that. like I said, it's very important when I speak about this. A lot of people tend to suggest that we're back to office 5 days a week. So what? But it gives you the provision and the flexibility. God forbid if you have an emergency, say in near term, you are now in a position to face it far better. A, B, more importantly, workplace scenarios can alter, right? You may have the provision to set up a remote work location on a Jiffy. So today, because of what we've gone through in the last 2 to 3 years, we have the provision. But last and more importantly, the focus of today's discussion, all of this has to be done in a very, very regulated and secure environment. So if you see, it is at the epicenter of the entire hybrid workplace objective, right? It sits at the core. So taking the story further, right? When we talk about any organization, every organization is trying to adapt and use technology to its advantage. So let's see how this actually maps up. So like I said, like in our previous slide, you have security at the center, right? You have traditional technologies, say like collaboration and virtualization, which I'm assuming most of you who are there listening to me today would have adopted across your scale of operations. And augmenting your traditional technologies are some new age technologies, things that we're currently using. They're emerging or emerged technology. You're using cloud for better work collaboration. You're using edge computing for better business operations. We see a lot of usage, and we see conversational AI creating a lot of buzz in the last 1 year. We will soon see, conversational AI being implemented in enterprise setups as well. You talk about AR, VR, how it's helped training and onboarding experiences. Analytics finds its place here in expediting, workflow, process simplification, so on and so forth. So like I said, I think it is a juxtapose of how traditional meets new age technology, and in the middle of it all is where security sits. So fundamentally, when we talk about an integrated workspace, two things that we have to keep in mind. See, when we speak about the workplace, there are two pivots. One is the employee, the other is the employer, and we have to make sure that both the concerns are met. If it's lopsided, we won't see success. So quite understandably, employees have their own set of concerns, employer has their own set of concerns. So employee is like, all I would like to do is focus on my work, and I don't need to worry or fret about where I'm working, how I'm working, will I get breached or not, right? And an employer, quite understandably, has a much larger concern, is considering that I have a much bigger and much larger perimeter to take care, right? Will my security get compromised? Right? So while we don't have any easy answers to this, and it's such a dynamic environment, but we just thought before I conclude my session, I'll leave you with 3 key areas that you may want to consider. Many of you, I'm sure, would have done so in your respective environments. So to have a more forceful view of how you look at enterprise security within your organization, I think a 360-degree view helps. The 3 areas that I'll probably like to talk about today is a little bit deep dive on how zero trust is becoming beneficial for many. How identity and access management, is allowing the provision of applications of access to anytime, anywhere, and a very, very important and critical upcoming area of how we're looking at data protection and resiliency. I'll keep the third point for last, but it's a very critical point in my view. So when we talk about zero trust, like I said, I think in the last few years, I think a lot is being said about zero trust. As you all are aware, we're not talking about a solution in particular, because zero trust is actually a framework, right? It is enabling us, and I think the question is it a relevant time to speak of zero trust? The answer in unison is a strong yes, right? So I think the way to go about this is to create an enterprise-wide zero trust strategy, have a SME team in place, and create an on-ramp approach. So first, isolate an environment, see how zero trust is done, create a pilot, seeing the success of it, extend it beyond the perimeters of larger setups, right? Have a mechanism of subscription of the latest threat intelligence data feeds that will keep you updated as far as threat intelligence goes. The more we speak about enhancing your security through maybe through multiple factor authentication like SSO sign-ins, keeping application updated to eliminate security vulnerabilities, so on and so forth is going to be very critical, right? And again, speak of continuous monitoring, environment assessment. But the last point, which I feel is what makes zero trust, as the name suggests, is enforcing the principle of least privilege to every user. It is regardless of who the user is. It may be the top management, the senior management, right to the bottom of the pyramid. The principle of least privilege suggests that you get least amount of access possible to every individual. That is possible through various means. One key, I think to a very large extent, I believe the entire framework and foundation of zero trust is in and around identity and access management. So I think both IAM and zero trust frameworks make it very crucial for decision makers to take it together to make your security posture 360 degree, right? So ensure, do your requirement assessment properly, because and identify which user needs which kind of privileged access, right? Focus on sensitive data protection, leverage the capabilities of enterprise IAM, because it's a very powerful tool, right? So how do I simplify data integration, data migration, identity federation, so on and so forth, right? But while we speak about identity and access management, it's very important that you also don't compromise on the security, user privacy, and the end user experience as a whole. Because typically when you talk about multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and so on and so forth, there is that big question mark: am I somewhere compromising on the end user experience? So I think a lot is being debated around this space, but I guess security is a no compromise area for you, and there's a lot of work being put into it where the entire experience of logging into your device and working and then exiting makes it seamless, so you're protected without compromising on the end user experience. So, and like I said, as I promised, the last but not the least, a very important part of your 360 view is how you're protecting your crown jewels. There's a lot being spoken about data protection and resilience. And I'll tell you, when I used to speak about business continuity and disaster recovery, I never spoke about cyber resilience then. A lot was being spoken about when we typically spoke about BCDR. Large part of emphasis was around how do I isolate my data centers? How do I prepare myself for a natural calamity? How do I prepare myself for a geopolitical crisis, so on and so forth? But as we are all aware, the biggest impediments to business, more often than not, is a cyber breach these days. So it's very important that you integrate, cyber resilience with your BCDR strategy. And to do that, key points to be considered: A, review your existing legacy systems. I think it's great if you can integrate a hybrid cloud approach and not just focus on traditional hardware dependencies, right? And very importantly, when you talk about a BCDR strategy or data protection strategy, not only do you protect your databases, but it's very equally important to protect your SaaS applications and endpoints, right? Because, like I said, given our nature of work, lot has transformed from being monolithic application-based organizations to much more composable architecture. So the way we consume applications, the way it's fed into our systems, and how endpoints have become more critical, it's very important that as part of your protection strategy, you focus on endpoints and SaaS applications, right? Then you increase the backup frequencies, and for that, I think AI will have a very strong part to play in the future, right? And try to automate your disaster recovery runbooks. It's important when you do that not to lose out on time, So you have enhanced systems in place to have entire recovery process with a single click. So to ensure that you work on the two basic key parameters of any strong BCDR strategy, which is RTO and RPO. So with this, I'll probably call it a day. But before I do that, few things to consider for you to you look at your security posture. Are your security threats evolving? I think it's a simple answer. I think nobody can be certain that I am fully secure. The biggest and the largest organizations will also, and they may have all the arsenal in place, they still have security vulnerabilities that have to worry, right? Second, very importantly, do you have the in-house capabilities to respond to a cyber attack? Or do I have to consider either do I go through a managed service approach, or do I use a partner in place, or do I beef it up by buying more security solutions, so on and so forth, right? Third, very important, depending on the industry that you belong, what are the regulatory and compliance issues as far as cyber and business resilience goes, right? Is there a necessity for business to revisit security posture frequently? I think the answer to that, again, in parts depends on the scale of your operations, the type of industry that you belong to, but a quick answer to this is yes. I mean, it is an analogy to how we look at BCDR, more the frequency of your dress rehearsals or drills, the better equipped you are to combat a situation, right? Again, like I said, not to miss out on alignment of backup with cyber preparedness. And the last but not least, which I said in my penultimate slide, very important to integrate security of your devices and applications along with a backup strategy in addition to the database that you're already protecting to make your security posture 360. This is a wrap from my end. My name is Uplag, and I'm so excited for the panel that is up ahead. Hope to see you around in the next minute. Bye for now.